Good afternoon, Syreeta. How you doing? You well?
I am very well, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Second time around, but we won't tell people why. Okay, we'll just keep that to ourselves. You got such a plethora of achievements, right, that you've amassed in your life and career. Doing my research, it was clear you haven't sat still for a minute, right? And when I came away from doing the research, I thought to myself, there's absolutely no waste of life here whatsoever. Like, you're on it. And then before we started this, you told me you were in your 50th year. Halfway through your 50 things. We'll get to the end of this interview before you tell us some of the other things that you're going to do. But what we're here to discuss is your book, which was made available earlier this year, right?
Yes, March.
February, March?
March.
Oh, okay, cool. Bigger Than the Moon, A Parents Journey With Autism. Hold it up for the camera for me, please. Appreciate you. Go grab that, people. Yeah, you're going to need to read that. If you can, Syreeta, walk me through the steps that made you realise you had to bring this book to market. Specifically, why you thought, I'm going to write about this, because you're not an author, right? This is your debut book. I'm saying debut book because there could be a follow-up.
Could be.
Walk me through the steps.
I have always written. I used to journal. My degree was in English literature, and when I was going through the process of Chloe being diagnosed with autism, and just before that, there were a lot of things happening in my life. And at the time, whilst I was surrounded by a lot of people, a lot of family, and I did have support, I felt quite alone, particularly because I was working full time. And as I reflected back during the process, I realised a lot of other parents go through the similar challenges that I have. And I don't think we tell our stories enough. And when I say we, I am specifically referring to stories in the Black community that don't necessarily align to the normal stories. And I felt my story was quite unique, but I knew I wasn't alone in it. So I wanted to reach out to those people, give them the benefit of my experience, and help people like me.
So looking back then, what was the moment that you would mark as the beginning of your personal transformation on this journey with Chloe?
I was going through the diagnosis process with her, and at the point she got diagnosed, everything at that point was about her. And at point of diagnosis, I realised I was going through the journey myself. I was transforming. I was needing support, and it shifted a little bit for me. Not that I detracted from her, the focus on her, but I needed to pay attention to me more than her in order to be able to help her. And a lot of other things were happening in my life at the time, and I just felt she came along to help me through that.
We're going to go back to that, but you share so many things in this book, intimate parts of your life. What was the most emotionally difficult chapter for you to write, and why?
Yeah, the most emotionally. That's a good question, Joel.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, the most difficult part was the acknowledgement that I had to deal with her diagnosis at the same time as a lot of other things shifting in my life. I moved jobs, I separated from Chloe's father, and I started again. And I shattered a lot of the myths I had told myself what my life was going to be like. That was very painful. And I actually stopped writing the book at that point. So there's a hiatus of a couple of years, which won't be acknowledged in the book, but I actually do in one of the chapters. I refer to it slightly by saying it's really difficult to write about this part of the journey. But I was able, after a couple of years, to go back and look at it more objectively and from a better place. So, and then I finished the book.
What was the how long did it take, the process?
I started writing deliberately 2017. And so I brought it to publication in 2025.
Long time.
Long time. And the book ends probably when it stops at when she's 8 years old. So you're right on the follow-up. I think there's been like 8 years since then.
And that's a whole chapter in like
a whole nother book.
How has your definition of resilience evolved since Chloe's diagnosis and everything that followed?
I think my definition of resilience before this journey would have been one of looking very stoic and strong. And what I discovered is that actually it was about putting yourself in a place of complete vulnerability. And as the Americans would say, palms up, surrendering. And it's a very it's the antithesis to what we typically think of as being, resilient. But I think you can't be resilient unless you go right there, right to the essence and the truth of how you're feeling. Once you've done that, you build yourself back up. But you can't but being strong and looking to be strong doesn't necessarily make you resilient.
So what's surprised you most about yourself as you've navigated motherhood, career and personal upheaval kind of all at once?
That I was very hard on myself. I felt that I needed to be good at everything and be perfect. And I discovered through kind of walking the journey with Chloe that imperfection is as powerful as perfection, if not better. That you find life in the cracks, as I like to say, in the moments that you feel things are not going your way, that don't go the way you want, and that take you to quite a despairing point, that's where the gold dust is, that's where life is. And I think we are traditionally, in modern society, told to it doesn't present that, it presents that everything's great, everything's good, especially in the era my son's growing up in, social media age, but that's not where life is. Life is in the hard stuff.
I often tell my children that the only thing perfect in life is imperfection.
Yep.
If you could go back and speak to yourself on the day that Chloe was diagnosed, what would you say to yourself?
Two things. It's going to be okay. And be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Did you think in the total opposite at that point?
Yeah, I was completely. I catastrophized. And I talk about this in the book. I blamed myself irrationally for things that may have contributed to Chloe's autism.
Do you find that's very natural as well? And I want you to
yeah, I've realised it is, but again, because I told my story, so people have come to me and said, I felt that too, Syreeta. And a lot of people, especially in my business network, have said to me how brave they thought I was and courageous in telling my story. But Joel, it never felt like a brave and courageous act because it was true.
Right.
And I grew up in a really Jamaican household, and my dad, who really guided, I think, and my mum did as well, but my mum guided my intellectual growth and development. My dad guided my moral and emotional development. And he always said to me, you can never go wrong with the truth. And so it felt quite natural to tell people. I felt it was a natural process because I thought, well, if I'm honest, people can be honest. And I used to find that at work when I talked about Chloe's diagnosis, other colleagues would say, oh, my child's got a need as well. And they never felt they could talk about it at work. So a lot of things happened as a result of me telling my story.
Opening up lets it in, right?
Yeah.
You talk about the invisible nature of learning needs. So my thought was, how can society and systems become more responsive to the needs that aren't immediately visible?
Yeah. Well, look, there's the obvious stuff. Awareness raising is the obvious kind of go-to answer for that question. And there's lots of, when I got Chloe diagnosed at 3, she's 16 now, the world was very different. It's a much better place for Chloe, even though there's still challenges. You have things like the sunflower lanyard. You have more people talking about invisible disabilities. But I would actually take it back a bit deeper than that. I would say in order to become more aware and supportive of invisible disabilities, we have to really look at what our society is not doing at the moment, which is there's a lack of empathy, lack of kindness, there's a lack of inclusiveness, and I mean that in the holistic sense. You know, we've almost become quite self-centered and linear about things, so we're not able to have that, what I call peripheral vision. Like, okay, I'm okay, but how would this affect so-and-so? Or, you know, I worked with a board member at Virgin Money who had a visible disability, and talking to her was so enlightening, because she would say to me simple things like arranging a meeting, the things that weren't considered for her, and some of the things that she had to go through because of that. So I think opening ourselves up to a world that's bigger than the one we occupy is really important.
What advice would you give to parents then just starting the process of seeking a diagnosis for their child? Because you mentioned she was 3.
Yeah.
What was the 3 years like before that, and what would you advise people if they're confronted with the circumstances you were?
Well, first of all, say read the book, and at the end of the book I do list my lessons learned and advice. I'm going to be a bit philosophical here and say, because there's lots of kind of concrete lessons, but one of the more philosophical ones is don't believe what you're told the first time.
Okay.
And I say this because I was talking to somebody just yesterday actually whose child is 7, and she's going through a really challenging time with the system. And by the system I'm talking about health, talking about social services, local authorities.
That's my next question.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And you get told things, and some people who are not as probably bolshy as me and who are not as curious as me, and who don't necessarily have the wherewithal or the capacity for whatever reason to challenge what they hear the first time, are left in a state of suspension, and the child suffers as a result, and then the issue becomes something else. And that's a really dangerous cycle that a lot of young kids are being subjected to. So don't believe what you hear the first time, and seek help. Even if you don't have financial means to get legal support, which is something I've had to do, go to Citizens Advice Bureau, go to your local MP. You know, MPs, in spite of the kind of current political climate, their job is to help their communities. And my MP helped me immensely in those early years of diagnosis with Chloe. And it's not about politics, doesn't matter what colour the politician is in terms of blue or red or green or yellow. Their role is to support you in their constituency, and they can be a very useful advocate and voice, just getting your story heard properly.
Yeah, good advice. Was there a specific tool or technique that helped you advocate effectively for Chloe within the local authority and school system?
Yeah,
so I'll change my question slightly based on what you said.
Quite a creative. Well, I did the usual stuff. I made a lot of noise.
That normally works.
Makes a lot of noise. But also, and I mentioned this in the book, I took the unusual step, and some people may not feel comfortable with this, but I always communicated in a human tone. I would include pictures of Chloe, and I labelled my letters the plan for Chloe, because I wanted people, and I talk about this now in the work I'm doing around the advocacy for parents in the SEND reform that's been proposed. You know, it's so easy to forget that there's a child at the bottom of every process, every letter, every budget challenge. There are children, and so every time I reached out to people, it would always be in a tone with empathy, understanding, it would not be adversarial, and I got a lot of, I think, response as a result of that.
Right, because you kept it neutral.
Yeah,
as neutral as you could. At
the beginning, I always give people a chance, right? I think you should start off in a tone of, look, we've got more in common than not.
Yeah.
And our aim is the same. And I would always make the communication, we have the same aim here. And I think if you reach out to people with the outcome that you are desiring and make it their outcome too. Now, sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. But I got more, I think, traction in the early days as a result of that.
Sound like you've got great skills with people. Now, I know you have, given the hats that you've worn. And maybe we'll get into some of that at the end, right? But how do you manage balancing Chloe's needs with your own self-care, especially during the most demanding periods?
I think in the early days in the early years, as I was embarking on the journey, I probably didn't. And, you know, I didn't realise it at the time, but things started happening to me physically. I got this really bad ear infection, and it was a virus. And as I read back now, these things are part of your nervous system. And so, but I am forever the swan, I just kept going. And then as Chloe started to become, you know, her infrastructure started to be put in place, I realised that I needed to look after myself more, and that I was better prepared to help her by doing that. I also have a son, and the siblings of children with special needs it's another challenging thing, right? You have to give time for them.
Of course.
And so that's when I realised I had to be more healthy. I would make sure I carve out time for myself. I had a great co-parenting arrangement, always been very positive in that sense. So we would help each other and give each other that time, because it is a lot of energy to look after a child with special needs.
Of course, and there's only 24 hours in a day, right? So factoring yourself in sometimes can be put on the back shelf.
Yeah.
But you can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
Before you see telltale signs of self-degradation. You've written about the importance of community, right? So what kinds of support were most helpful to you, and what support do you wish existed?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I think my first support network that I really grew to cherish and still do is the other parents. And I was introduced to other parents through the National Autistic Society Early Bird Programme, which helps parents as they start to go through the journey. And these mums, I mean, a lot of the parents of special needs children do not work because they can't. It's impossible. It's really tough, right, to juggle a role, a full-time working role, with having a child with needs. Sometimes they had more than one, and they were like warriors. And I got so much. Although I was always the only one in these groups working full-time, they became my lifeline, because it was like they knew what to do. They navigated the system, or were navigating it. And they gave me so much advice and help. And knowing you're not alone is one of the first tenets, I think, in feeling confident that you can go through the journey. And the second one was the wraparound childcare I had for Chloe, her childminder. She became a real... She looking after Chloe wasn't just about looking after Chloe. It was about talking to me and just providing security for somebody who couldn't be with her child all day. And as Chloe finished school, she would go to this childminder, and she became a real part of my extended family.
That must have been invaluable.
Invaluable.
Yeah, because you can't take that for granted.
No.
You know, finding that connection and
No.
just being comfortable in that way. You credit flexible working with enabling your career growth. So what structural changes do you believe organisations should take to generally support parents with children with additional needs? Yeah,
and look, I was really lucky. I started my career as a graduate at BT, and they were quite leaders in flexible working even back then. That was like late 90s, early 2000s. So it was always a part of my career experience to have flexible working. But as I became more senior, I realised that in order for it to be a feature, I had to almost, you know, doing the work I did, I could lead from the front almost and influence policies in companies, in the companies I worked in. And I think that's where it starts, is there being an understanding. It's not about working less, it's about working more effectively. And that flexible working isn't just for women with children or dads, it's for everybody. You know, there are many reasons why people may need to work flexibly. Aging workforce, people now have elderly parents. You know, you might have caring responsibilities for other children in your family. There's lots of reasons. So companies having forward-thinking, flexible working, that doesn't mean working less, it just means working more effectively and using the team structure to do that. So here we go then, Syreeta. As a senior leader yourself, how has your personal journey influenced your approach to leadership, especially in terms of empathy and inclusion? I probably started my leadership journey like most people do, which is how can I create more people like me? No one will admit to that, but I will.
I love that. I love that honesty.
Everybody does this, and I've seen it in my career, and that's why I feel confident saying this.
Yeah.
I've observed it in the business leaders I've worked with, and that's the beginning. And then something happened to me one day. I was working in Citigroup, American global bank, and I had team members all over the world. And one of them was quite an introvert, very quiet guy, still friends with him to this day, and he never talked in meetings. And I thought, oh God, I'm not sure this person's a great performer. And then one day, as I was going through the experience with Chloe, I really realised how much I valued being listened to and heard. And it made me reach out to this individual and after a meeting, and I asked this individual, what did you think about the meeting today? And he came out with this gold dust of information, and I said, well, why didn't you say anything in the meeting? He said, well, you know, and then I started challenging my own bias, my own stereotypes. And when I think about Chloe and how she may be perceived in the world, it's made me really want to create an environment where all profiles of people are heard in the way that suits them, not in the way that I understand
Correct.
it.
So like a 180.
Yeah, it was completely. And I started building teams where people were different and they brought different things. And I was really lucky in Citi. It was a global company. So you had the cultural dynamic as well, not just the kind of protected characteristics. You had people speaking different languages. You had cultural norms being cultural atypical norms in other parts of the world. And you had to bring that together.
Amalgamate everything.
And I realised that I became really good at that.
Okay.
And as a result, I did really well in the work I delivered through empowering people. And so I got a lot from that. And I think Chloe, you know, I say this all the time, she was definitely sent to me for a reason. She has been my kind of, my guide, actually. And I think she's helped me more than I probably help her.
I wouldn't say it's probably reciprocal, but you're not giving yourself the value. It's interesting though, right? How much we learn and glean from the younger gen. So what message would you give to other parents in high pressure roles then, who feel they can't choose between career and caregiving?
Yeah, I feel so passionate about this because yesterday I was talking to this person who has told me that she had to stop working, and she is a very intelligent, she was working in the city and she had to stop working to look after her child, and I could feel every part of my body like tightening. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, because not that. So here's the thing, Joel, it's not whether working or not working is right or wrong, but where an individual can and wants to, they should feel enabled and empowered to do that. They shouldn't feel the only choice is not working. And there are people like me who have done it and have a toolkit, have a playbook. And I think my goal, I think, with this book is to start reaching out to people who want to work, because there's an economic benefit to this, not just for the individual but for the children as well. You know, children growing up in environments where, you know, they can thrive and not just survive, and that goes for the parents too. So I think creating much more awareness and for companies to have flexible working that allows people to come to them and say they need help with the way they work. There's a lady called Charlie Beswick, who's one of her children has a special need, and she's made this her job to go around supporting companies and helping them understand how they can support parents. So there's a few of us trying to, I think, get it out there, but this is going to be a big issue for society, because there's more children with special needs than less, and I think as part of the, you know, keeping the country going and keeping people working, it benefits everybody to support them.
So as the readers turn the last page on Bigger Than the Moon, how are you hoping that reader to feel?
Hopeful. There's a hope. There's an acknowledgement that it doesn't necessarily end. The challenges don't end, but the hope is that you will find a way through, and you have to keep going. It's important to keep going.
I said at the beginning of this interview, you wear a lot of hats. I had to get my notes out, right? So I'm not going to read them all off because I think people should do their own research on who you are. But I noticed that you were named as Financial Service Leader at the 2018 Black British Business Awards. You featured in the UK Powerlist 2023. You sit on various trusts and advisory boards. And you're currently...
Just finishing.
Right. What? Should we say or should we not say?
We can say.
Okay,
yeah,
we can say. So
I'm currently Chief People Officer and Communications Officer at Virgin Money.
That's what I had.
Which has been bought by Nationwide, so I am now moving away and having my first ever career break, which is amazing.
Oh, wow. What we in the 50th year?
In the 50th
I mean,
year?
God is blessing you in all types of ways. All types of ways.
He is.
So what are we going to be doing? Talk about this 50th year.
I'm gonna be
taking. Smile on your face.
I know.
As well.
It's amazing.
You've been having fun, right?
I talk to my colleagues, my old colleagues, and they're laughing their head off when they see me. But no, you know what it is? It's time to reset. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you've said it well before we started talking and during the conversation. I wear many hats. I've done many things, and it's been amazing to be powering and to keep going. But in order to continue to keep going, I think I've underestimated the need to rest. Mm. And I don't think, and culturally, as a black woman, I don't think the narrative says that we can do that. And it's interesting how many people I speak to from all different cultures, when I say I'm taking a break, they look at me twice, and it's like, wow, that's interesting, right? So we can rest too. And I'm encouraging all my fellow sisters that I talk to, it's okay to rest, because I never told myself that for the last 50 years. Mm. But I'm telling myself that it's a discipline, by the way, because I don't naturally do it.
What month are you born?
October.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a Libra, and I don't naturally do it. But in the rest, I was saying earlier to Michael, your lovely videographer, that I have filled the space, but it's been filled with things that are energizing me and creating, I think, the window to what I might do next. Mm. And so it's being more thoughtful about what I do next and giving myself the time to enjoy the present moment, which I don't think I've been able to do as much.
Well, good luck with that. Sounds good. What about some of the other 20? Let's leave the 25 things you've done already. What 25 things have you got to go, and just to put some context on that?
I'll tell you a couple of things. My lovely friend Nadia, who will be accompanying me, posted a picture of a book the other day on Instagram, and I said to her, "What's that?" And it's the slave registration of slave owners and the slaves that's at Sentinel House, the University of London Library. And she said, yeah, you can go there, you know, book an appointment, you'll have to wear white gloves, and you can go and look at the register. And I was thinking, I'd love to do that. You know, I'm very into, you know, history tracing. I've done that with my own family. I found the logbook of my own grandmother's arrival into the UK on the ship entry. So I've got that. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and do that as a homage to those people who came before and I don't know. And I'm also going to, you've heard this, Joel, I'm going to Jamaica to do a New Year's Eve party at my favourite hotel in Port Antonio.
I love the way you're reaffirming and just letting the universe know I'm coming.
Yeah. Letting Chloe's dad know as well, just in case he's not around. There's a load of other things. Yeah. I think it's been, I'm also tomorrow taking my son to, he's definitely not his thing, but it's my thing, but I want to share it with him. I'm taking him to a Coldplay concert.
Oh, wow.
So
it's your thing, but you're taking him?
I'm taking him because he's 22 and whether you like them or not, their concerts are so uplifting and so energising. And I think it will stop him being on his device. So and I want him to have a moment with me that he will remember. And I think that will be it. So, moments.
I mean, that's going to be an experience.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
especially because he's probably got no interest.
No interest.
That's definitely a mum move, right?
Yeah. It's Playboy Carti for my son, not Coldplay. But you never know after this.
So you're not jumping out of a plane or anything like that, no?
No, I'm not jumping out of a plane. I don't think I need to do that.
Right.
I think if I wanted to do it, I would do it.
Yeah. I get that impression from you.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, with these things, not to do things that you think you should do, but to do things you want to do and that have meaning. I'm going to pull a reel together, actually, Joel, when I finish my 50 things. So, yeah, I'll be sure to send it to you.
You mentioned that you don't have too much downtime, but what does downtime look like?
A beach. A beach or the gym or yoga.
Okay.
I'm a big yoga fanatic.
Wellness.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
You look well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Listen, it's been a great conversation. I want people to go out and buy Bigger Than the Moon. Is there any final things you want to share on the book? Or?
Yeah, just one thing. I think there's lots of themes I kind of traverse in the book, as well as the central theme of my journey with the world of autism. But one of the ones that comes out, and I think quite strongly in a certain section, is the process of breaking generational cycles. And there's a kind of almost tribute to my grandmother in there, in that she had a very similar experience to me, I think, but it was not. In no way would she have told the story like I did. In fact, she probably wouldn't have expressed it either.
Well, they didn't, did they?
Didn't.
That generation, they just told it.
It's been a real gift, I think, to be able to bring that full circle and to understand that. She died in 2006, but to understand her journey in a different way, and I didn't understand it when she was alive, but going through my own journey, I understand her more, and I think there's a lot more stories like that in our community. So yeah, really excited for people to see.
So you've kind of done your thing in terms of breaking a generational cycle that's maybe not been positive for us, and here's a positive outcome.
Yes.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.